All righty. Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday of REEF Fest. Hope you all had a good night. The sun was out today and the skies cleared and the ground dried up. So that's wonderful news for all of us heading over to the For the Love of the Sea dinner later. A couple of announcements before we get started with our amazing speakers. If you did not get a REEF Fest shirt yet, or if you have a friend who may really want one, we have more. So please stop by the welcome station in the front, out in the lobby. We've got them there. We'll have them again tonight. So be sure to get your shirt. Tonight, for those of you coming over, if you have questions about where you're going, feel free to grab any of us later. But if you're familiar with the area, just to the south of the property where we're going is a U-Haul facility. And if you're mobily able, it would be great if you could park in the U-Haul lot. That would allow us to accommodate more cars on the property where the event will be. It's a relatively small amount of parking. So that would be great. The doors will open at 4:30. The event really gets started about 5 and we'll wrap up at 8 o'clock. If you're going on the garden tour tomorrow at Penny Camp, it's a really nice way to kind of round out the weekend. It should be really nice weather. The tour and all of that is free, but it doesn't include your entrance into Penny Camp. It's not very much, but just be prepared. You pay a per car entrance fee to get into the park. And then finally, I just want to give a big shout out again to David, and Daryl for helping us with all of the tech up in the booth and down here. We really couldn't do this without help. So we greatly appreciate them. And our auction donors, we don't have the auction set up here because it'll be over at the event later. But if you got a chance to check it out, you saw that we have an amazing collection of items, and it's really due to the generosity of so many different community members here and members from far away. If you saw the beautiful quilt, Gail Klepper, I don't know if you're in this room, but Gail, are you? Gail, shout out, man. She has been doing she's been making us a quilt specifically for this event every year for, I don't know, almost 10 years, probably as long as this event's been running. So we're so grateful for her to bring that artistry to the auction. So without further ado, I'm super happy to invite our very own Dr. Alli Candelmo to the virtual stage here. She is our Director of Conservation Science. She's been an amazing, invaluable member of our team. Alli and I first met in the Cayman Islands, in Little Cayman, when she was still working there at the Marine Lab there. And then we were super lucky to snag her when she was done with that position and hired her, and we are never going to let her go. And it's only moderately due to the fact that she brought a little baby to the family and we all get to pass her around. You'll see that Alli is doing amazing work with our conservation science program. She's going to share a couple of those with you now. So take it away.
Okay. 2 projects that I'm working with at REEF, and there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to go fast. But I have been coughing all week, so if I do pop a cough drop in my mouth, I apologize for the rumbling after that. I'm trying to do it without it. Okay, so our first one is the SMILE project. And this has just kind of come about in the past few years. And the goal of this project is to allow citizen scientists to contribute linked data of fish species, which is really limited in science and management. And our goal is to create a novel technology that is portable and affordable and small and can be incorporated into the existing reef surveys, but also done on its own. And the data will be usable for future stock assessments, management, and conservation. So in order to do that, we've been collaborating with a great group of people from the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council, Socorro, Scripps, OSU, the UCSD Engineers for Exploration. And then we also have stakeholder meetings regularly throughout the year with scientists from NOAA, FWC, and the Nature Conservancy contributing to how we should input the data, collect the data, as well as citizen scientists. Fred Hartner has been an amazing contribution to the project, giving us feedback on what we need to do to make this project usable by divers. And so to start it out, we were thinking about stereo video technology. That technology is being used by scientists, but it's quite expensive. The systems are often large and cumbersome. And then the processing of the data is both lengthy, time-consuming, and expensive. The software for that currently is not affordable, and it really doesn't meet our goals for a citizen science program. So we began to develop a camera, and you can see the first iteration was not our small compact system that we were looking for, and the goal was to use depth of field technology, and it had great promise, but it was just way too complicated, and it flooded, and there was too many bells and whistles. So we streamlined it down to FishSense Lite, and FishSense Lite currently, the current iteration, is your Olympus TG6, which a lot of you have already, with the dome port made by Backscatter, and then just a single laser mounted on it. And this is just a laser that we've bought off, B&H. And that allows the diver to go out, get the laser on the fish, take a burst image of the lateral side of the fish, and then from that we can extrapolate the data. And so how that single laser technology works, this is sort of a simple rudimentary way of showing it, but ultimately when the laser hits the fish, depending on where that laser falls in the frame of the image, as the fish gets further away, that laser is going to look like it's closer to the center of that image. So through that information, we can determine how far away the fish is from the diver. And if you know how far away the fish is from the diver, then you can figure out how big that fish is using sort of the pixels that the fish take up in that image. And so through that, there's an AI workflow that's being developed that finds that laser. It finds the head and the tail of the fish, and then it computes the fish length. All of that sounds super easy, right? This has been years in the making. And there's still issues. We still struggle sometimes to find the laser. The engineers that are working at it don't really understand that fish are different shapes at first. So we had to be like, well, actually, most fish don't actually fall into that fish shape. They're not always perfectly perpendicular, uniform on each side. So they've had to tweak that. But it's been interesting working with the engineers and then the biologists and talking about how we can make this work. So that's a little bit of the engineering. I'll get more into some engineering a little bit later. But as we were thinking about how this would work in the field, are divers really going to be able to go out there and take pictures of every single fish with this system? No, that would take up their whole dive and they may not enjoy it anymore. So we've narrowed it down to some target species that we're addressing right now in the TWA. And those are a suite of the important ecologically and economically important grouper that we find here, the hogfish, a few snapper, and then 4 parrotfish to get that ecological ecosystem effect. And if people see other fish and they take pictures of them, that's great. We encourage it for sharks and other rare species. But these are the ones that we're asking them to look for the current pilot project. So we've been piloting this for the past 2 years, probably 3 years with our initial grant and that initial system. And we've done about total 209 dives in the Keys with the project with 36 different volunteers. And so we've targeted a lot of alligator reef to try to get some seasonal differences on that site and also look at a smaller geographic range and and it also is a good reef for those particular species from what we found from talking with the divers and going out there and exploring ourselves. But we've hit other areas in the Keys. And we've also sent them on some field trips. So some of you have maybe seen these out on your field trips. We are struggling to get people to be interested in using them on the field trips. So I'd love to talk with you guys one-on-one about that today a little bit. Probably not after this talk, because I don't think we're going to have time, but later at FLOSS, because Maybe we're going to have to design field trips specific for Smile, because I know a lot of people go out on those field trips and want to know, they just want to do their surveys. But from the feedback that we're getting from divers, you can do the surveys and take the cameras with you. It is possible, but you can also just take the cameras. And so it's possible that we're going to end up targeting some divers that don't want to learn 100 fish species or 500 fish species, in the Indo-Pacific, but want to contribute to the data anyway. And so this will allow them to learn 10 or 20 species and go out there and still collect really usable data. But you can do both if you want to, or you could do one or the other. You could do neither and just go out and enjoy your dive, but we don't recommend that at REEF. So, oh, jeez. So, but Anna had a great time with the camera, and I actually haven't had a chance to talk to her about it yet. And Lex took it out in Baja. So we've been able to get feedback from everybody on those field trips. And then we also took the cameras to Grouper Moon, where we do a lot of length measurements of the NASA groupers there already. So that was a great place to test it out. While we're doing that, sorry, I should have kept that up. We do the stereo video assessments there as well. And when we're in the field in the Florida Keys, we also have that stereo video camera out with us. So we're able to compare those two technologies together. And also we've taken measurements of our some known objects to see if these are really working in the field. And so far the data has shown that yes, they are. We're still waiting for a lot of data to come back. But we're getting good measurements with both technologies. There's some flaws, there's some issues, depending on the lighting, the species, the visibility, the angle, that you have to work out. But it's still good data. It's usable data. And you know what? It's data that doesn't exist out there. When we first started this project, one of the scientists at the council said to us, they only have 50 length data as a black grouper a year to put into their assessment. 50, which is like crazy. There's a lot of black grouper coming out of the ocean in the fisheries, and they're only getting 50 measurements of that species to put into their assessments. So that's really not enough. Length data is important to understand population dynamics of a species, to understand their spawning biomass, to understand recruitment. So without that information, scientists aren't really able to manage those species correctly. So some of our challenges that we've been facing is flooding the lasers, breaking the laser mounts, finding the laser. That red laser is often difficult to see on the fish on the ground. So we're switching to the green laser, which scares the crap out of some of the fish. They don't like it, but it still is a lot easier to use. So I think we're gonna move to green laser because you just can see it better in the pictures. You can see it better in the field. It'll get us more images in the long run. Right now, you can't change the settings or zoom too much on the camera, or you have to make sure you bring it back. So we're looking at, advancing that so you can use it with any camera on any setting, potentially with videos and GoPros. And also, we have to calibrate the slates right now, calibrate it with slates. So we're trying to get away from that calibration process a little bit. So it just makes it a little bit easier for divers to use. And I'll talk a little bit more about the advancement of that technology in a second. But figuring out if the fish is too small to capture, if the fish is too big to get in the frame. The fish are skittish. This is me chasing a rainbow parrotfish, and on the dives this week, I chased about 30 rainbow parrotfish across the reef. Rainbow parrotfish do not like to be photographed. So I did not catch that rainbow parrotfish, which is super frustrating. And so when we think about the data that comes from this project, we'll have to get an understanding of some selectivity. Some species are just not going to get, we're not going to get a lot of data on. It doesn't mean they're not there. We just can't get it. But we're still getting good data on other fish. So one of the things that we have been doing is working on a new, pointing the wrong way, don't blind anyone. A new sort of all-encased laser that Backscatter's creating with their company. And so it's going to be a rechargeable laser with magnets. It's probably going to have a parallel laser set in there. So that's going to allow us to do the analysis 2 ways and avoid those calibration slates, hopefully. It's going to be brighter, it's going to be smaller, and it's going to be cheap. And it's going to be you're going to be able to buy it on Backscatter. So, and hopefully mount it to any camera system eventually. So those are the goals. Finley's very excited about them. She wouldn't hold it up, but she got a big smile. And then with that, we're also incorporating user surveys to improve the program, improve the technology, and also figure out who will participate in this program. Why will they participate? Why won't they? How much will they pay? So we've been kind of doing this roughly. Jen's been doing a lot of it, with surveys with the divers that we have now, but we're working with scientists from FWC and Colorado State University to develop a proper social science survey that we'll send out to divers before they've done it. So we're going to send out to all of you guys and to ask you, would you contribute, would you participate in SMILE? Why or why not? And then once you've had a chance to do it, then we're going to send out surveys about that. We're also setting up some new workshops and partnering with local dive shops to get the cameras in the hands of more divers here in the Keys. So far, some of the surveys have shown, just in general, it's fun, it's easy to operate, it's sort of like a video game. So it's great input we're getting about them. Moving forward quickly. So some of this, we're getting a lot of imagery data and we need to collect it and process it. And so that's next steps. How are people going to submit those images? Where is it going to be stored? How quickly can we get the measurements from the data? That kind of leads us to our Grouper Spotter platform, where we have a lot of those questions for that one as well. So Grouper Spotter has come out of Grouper Moon, which some of you probably have heard about, but we're, anyone that doesn't, we go down to Little Cayman each year and do research and assess the population of a spawning aggregation of NASA grouper on Little Cayman. And the traditional method for determining the number of fish there was a mark recapture method where we tag them externally. However, and so we tag them externally, and then you go out and do tag counts and try to count how many tags you see in about 50 fish in a 50 fish count, and then you do that over and over, and you can extrapolate the population from that. However, there are some issues with that. There can be injury or infection. The tags can fall out, or it's difficult to determine the different colors between years, which could lead to overestimation or underestimation of the populations. And you don't get information on individual resightings, so you can't learn about survival or mortality, spawning behavior, social interactions, or growth rates. So in order to try to advance that, we've started doing Grouper Spotter, which I know a lot of you have heard about already. And the goal with Grouper Spotter is to use these cool patterns on the NASA grouper to individually recognize them, and then ultimately be able to do mark recapture each year from imagery. So if we get the same individual that comes back each day, you can eventually do a population assessment through that. The other cool stuff you can learn through this method is how what their spawning behavior is. So we have individuals that we're seeing 1 month apart, which is super cool. And then also, because we're getting all this length technology, we have the stereo video and the SMILE cameras now, we can get growth rates of individuals. So we're able to upload these images that we have length measurements on and then see how much the fish have grown. So the biggest challenge is taking 20 years of imagery and putting that into the system. We're talking about probably 30,000 images of fish that we've kind of extracted from some of the videos so far. And now we're collecting more and more videos each year. So we're working through a workflow that is super challenging because these fish are camouflaged for a reason, and also there's a lot of them. So when you try to get a model to find and box all these fish, you can see just in that little box, there's 20 fish that we could upload to Grouper Spotter. And so our training data sets look like this. This is how we're trying to train models to find the fish. And so what we really need is volunteers to help us create these training data sets. So if anyone's interested in helping us box fish, coming to you soon will be emails from Alli saying, please, can you box some of these fish so we can improve our models and find all our fishies. So we need more of that. And surprisingly, that doesn't exist yet in the fishery field, even though a lot of people are doing this. And then also we want to track those individuals because sometimes the individuals change their patterns. And so we only want to get a couple, images of the individual in a video So we're working with other workflows that allow you to individually segment the fish to find the individuals and then select which one you want to select. And then there's also a Viami platform that allows you to pick those fish out. So again, there is some training data set volunteer work coming to you soon. So if anyone is interested in that, please talk with me. But the cool thing about the platform is we have expanded it to different locations, and we're working with WildMe to incorporate the reef zone codes into it. So people will be able to enter their zone codes when they add their fish species. And now we've created a multi-species model in it. We've added camouflage grouper from Pacarava. Tom had the pleasure of going out there and collecting this footage. So as you can see, again, camouflage grouper, even more of a challenge in our boxing our fish, but we've got loads of imagery data to upload for camouflage grouper. We've worked with FWC, or FWRI, and FIU, as well as a number of reef members to collect 2,000 images of Goliath grouper to add the Goliath grouper to the multi-species model. And then we also have added potato cod through Rowan Watt Pringle of Wildlife and Ecological Investments. He took the time himself to put together about 2,200 images of the potato cod so we could add potato cod to our model. So with that, I'd like to say, get your photos ready. We're getting very close to asking you for them. It is ready for you to upload them, but it's going to be much cleaner and easier very soon. And I'll take any questions. Sorry, that was a lot of information. Do I have time for questions?
Yeah, one or two. Anybody want? You can also, of course, catch Alli at the break. So, oh yes.
I'm a little puzzled over how you can get the length of a grouper if you simply put a laser spot on the side of it. What makes the AI program able to detect the length of the fish? Does it go by the diameter of the dot?
No, it goes by the where the dot falls within the frame. So by knowing we have a calibration slate. So the laser is calibrated and the laser is in a fixed place on the camera, right? So that means that laser will fall within the frame in the same spot all the time. So if it hits the grouper in a specific spot, you can estimate how far away the grouper is from the camera, and then from there use depth of field technology to get the length. Sorry, I tried to explain that in the slides. It's not an easy thing to kind of.
Did you explain when is the backscatter version going to be available? And you said that's going to be available to use on your personal computer,
We're hoping eventually, because that'll take some workflow through the engineers to be able to get the length from it. But it should be available. The next prototype is, I'm hoping, to be available in the next month or two. So I think in the store is probably not for like another 6 months or more. Yeah.
Hello. Just to be clear, I may have missed the reality, but do I understand that you actually have been documenting individual Nassau groupers, and then by facial recognition, you know that that fish has grown so much in a given period of time, that individual?
So we can know that if we've measured the length in both of the instances of those images. So in the case of that example, there were 2 laser dots on the fish in both cases. So we know it's the same fish, and we had measured that fish in both of those years. So then we were able to find the growth.
This is so exciting. I mean, this is cutting edge technology. So that means with that visual information, you're comparing those sizes to known museum specimens with the otoliths that correspond to the age of the fish. Where is that being done? What museum or which ichthyologist is doing the study that confirms the length and the age based on the otoliths?
Like, how old are those fish?
Yeah, we don't have the age of you could maybe estimate the age from age growth models, just based off of another
Yeah,
study that
Yeah,
measures that.
I understand, and that it's still really exciting, but I would be willing to try and help REEF connect the length to the age
Oh, right.
using museum specimens, which have confirmed, and by the way, otoliths, of course, are the inner ear bones, and you can age them. Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Great
Yep.
talk. Very
Okay, great.
exciting.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Right. So, thank you, Alli. I know that was a lot to cover in a little bit of time, but it's always exciting. We've got a lot of information. If you're not paying attention to our monthly e-news articles, we share a lot of this kind of great new science that we're doing in our monthly e-news. So be sure to check those out. We've got a lot on our website too. Okay, so before we switch over to our final talk of the series, Stephen Frink with a very interesting talk, I'm sure. Martha and I just wanted to take a couple minutes to share with you the exciting new things that are happening with over on the campus, which many of you saw the other day. So here you go, Martha.
Okay, Alli, that's fascinating. It's amazing. The advancement in technology and the implications that it's going to have for fisheries advancement on a global scale. Once you can have a little laser camera that's less than $100 mounted onto any underwater camera, the potential for impact is really significant. So it's exciting to hear all these updates live as they're happening. And thank you for being here. How many of you, this is your first time being at REEF Fest? Wow. Yay, that's awesome. And so many of you are coming back. You've been at REEF Fest before. It's like coming back to a family. And we're so happy to have you here. And I hope for the new people that this is your first time visiting, that you're feeling that you're feeling welcomed and part of a community, because all of the work that REEF has been doing has made possible by this community of people, from the volunteers that are testing the smile cameras and entering surveys, to donors that are financially supporting these projects to make it possible. This community has been amazing in the growth that we've had. It's really astonishing looking back at the last 5 or 10 years and how the organization together, the progress that we've made in conservation. I think Ned and Paul, back when they started this 30 years ago, never would have guessed that they would see this project grow, this organization grow to more than 300,000 volunteer fish survey projects, surveys in the database, cameras with lasers on them. I mean, who would have thought? So it's fun to see the progress and growth of the organization. And part of that is the new Ocean Exploration Center. So that'll be opening here June 6th through 8th. Mark your calendars. We'll send out a save the date soon. That'll be the grand opening of the center. And it's going to be a transformative, really impactful community gathering place. Whether you're inside the walls of the center or you're remote, the center will serve as a hub for scientific research and collaboration for projects like the one that Alli just spoke about, for community gathering. The potential for it is really significant. And we're excited to see this big next step for the organization. How many of you have come across the term eco-anxiety or like environmental grief? Raise your hand if you've heard of that before. So it's kind of newer to me, but the idea of it is that there's so much to worry about on the environmental front. Looking out at the horizon, from climate change to habitat loss, species decline, oftentimes people are having this negative reaction of it's overwhelming and they don't know what to do about it. And so what we want to do with the center is to help create a place where people can come in, learn about the oceans, feel connected to the oceans, and feel like they can do something about it, that it's a center for hope, that individually you don't have to save the world, but together there's this collective impact of what we can make possible, and that REEF has this 30-year history of doing that in a really concrete, tactile way. So we're excited for the opportunity that this center will bring to open up the doors and bring more people in under that umbrella. It'll be a cross-platform center, so we'll have art exhibits in there. The current building on the property is the oldest building in the Upper Keys, so we'll be telling a lot of the history and story of the Florida Keys and coastlines in Florida. So combining art and science and history so that it's a really robust and welcoming experience for everyone. So I know we want to get to Stephen Frink's amazing photos, so I could go on and on, but I will hold it back just a little bit. It's been really exciting to see this happen. Some of you probably heard from us 2 years ago as we started this project and first broke ground on construction, and we just finished the construction punch list last week. So construction is officially done, and exhibit design, we have an amazing exhibit team and a great team that we're working with for fabrication. Those are fully designed. They'll be installed later this year, and it's exciting to see it go on to that next phase. And the support from the community has just been astounding. You know, it's a $6 million project, and when Christy and I first started working on this with the board, there's a lot of enthusiasm and a little bit of nervousness as we went into that project. And to date, from support from this community and grants that we've received for the project, we've raised $5.3 million. So we're very close to the goal. It is amazing. And I mean, it's thanks to many of you in this room that made a donation, a leadership gift to help make that vision possible. So 600,000 seems much more reasonable than the $6 million goal that we started with. And that's from, a community of support. So a gift of any size makes a difference. There's recognition opportunities. Oh, that's my daughter in the pink there. There's recognition opportunities on the outside of the building. There'll be an exterior Oceans of Support community donor wall. You might have seen there's a replica of that we had out at some of the earlier events. So for donations of $2,500 or above, you could be recognized there. And then there's other recognition opportunities inside the center. But the building is just a building. What really makes it special are the programs and the people that are there. So we're really excited for the community support that's bringing that center to life and the ways that you can be a part of it. Yep. Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. So we're going to pull this and get Stephen in this prime spot here. Okay. Okay. So while we could have probably disconnected the yeah, as Martha was sharing that, the exhibitry that is going to go into that center is really going to make it a super special place. And I'll share one kind of fun video that you're going to be able to do, which is, of course, the Volunteer Fish Survey Project. That's, kind of the cornerstone of what REEF does. It's what you're going to see when you first walk into that building is a sculptural representation of a Florida coral reef or a Caribbean, ecosystem. There'll be a 3D climb throughable, full, all of the different habitats. There'll be a sea fan meadow, a spur and groove type area, and a patch reef area that will be complete with over 50 species of fish swimming in and around it, modeled fishes. And there'll be that opportunity then for people to do a dry survey, go in and, everything from the most obvious, barracuda hanging up over the top to the rusty goby that you're going to have to really look for, crawl through the little crawl through and find it. So that'll be one of the really fun components that will help introduce people who might not be very familiar with the Volunteer Fish Survey Project to get them a little taste while doing it on dry land. And there will be about a 50 more species throughout the building. So if you're a surveyor and you're familiar with the concept of a century dive, which is a survey of a reef survey that you can find at least 100 species of fish on, we call that a century dive. It's a very fun, milestone to be able to do that. So there'll be 50 more species throughout the, whether photos, little, hidden gems. So you can do a century dive inside the building. So that's going to be a really fun little feature that we're really excited to share, some of the stuff that Alli was sharing, that impact and the conservation science component. There'll be on the second floor of the building, several exhibits that share the impact and the conservation collaboration that we have with different partners to, help save the ocean, plain and simple. So really being able to share that. And then, as Martha said, there'll be an art exhibit upstairs and having seminar space. So for those of you who've come to Fish and Friends over at our campus and maybe had to little standing room only action there in that room, in the Reefscape room, we'll be able to, I'm going to keep talking, have seating for up to 80 up in the second floor. So there won't be, it'll be a much more spacious experience for Fish and Friends, which is, for those of you who don't live in the Keys community, the second Tuesday of every month, we have a great seminar series that happens where we welcome speakers primarily from the South Florida area, but often others who might be in the region for research or other opportunities. So that's a really fun. So if you're ever planning a visit to the Keys, be sure to stop by for that Fish and Friends seminar series. Still working on it. I'll keep talking. Yes, yeah. So the with the same kind of the technology that's allowed us to do these seminars now on Facebook. That's right. Thank you, Luann, for reminding us all that for anyone who wants to watch Fish and Friends, it is live streamed on our Facebook page, our General Reef Facebook page. And then those actually all get archived and saved. So even if you can't watch live, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/WeSpeakFish, all one word, and go to that YouTube channel, and you can find in the last couple of years, our Fish and Friends speakers, as well as all of our past Reef Fest speakers. So really nice to be able to have that technology kind of locked in finally. It took us a while, but we finally figured it out. So I think they're still working.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, right.
We talked about the date of the opening of the Ocean Exploration Center. Do you want to talk about kind of what's going on
At
that
the
weekend?
over that weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will obviously, if you're coming here, there'll hopefully better weather and you'll get out on the water. So we'll have a bunch of suggested charter operators to work with, diving, snorkeling, kayaking, some bird watching and other tours and that kind of stuff. There'll be a ribbon cutting, a kind of a formal celebration Saturday afternoon with a ribbon cutting. We'll have food trucks in the parking lot and festival kind of do some special tours, hands-on activities, lionfish dissections, all those different activities. And then on Sunday, it'll be open to the public. This is going to be a free and open to the public facility. So it'll be, a really great resource for the community. And oh, great, here comes Martha.
And we're really excited with this new center to have an amazing team that's helping to run it. I don't know if you've seen our 15 staff running around over the weekend, busily setting things up. We have a fabulous team right now, and we're really excited to have 2 additions to our leadership team. Dr. Alli Candelmo is our Director of Conservation Science. We also have REEF. Yes. We also have Jill, who is our REEF Campus Director, and Michaela Peterson, who's our Education Director. So since we have a few minutes, we'll keep talking for about 5 more minutes, and then we'll take a break if this doesn't sort itself out. So let's have Jill come on up, and you can introduce yourself.
I feel like I'm one of those telethons, where they're like, we're going to get right back to our program with world famous foods. But just a few words about your support for our local community nonprofit organization. No, it's all good. My name is Jill Keenert, and since January, I've been the campus director here at REEF in Key Largo. Actually, my awareness of REEF really coincides with my arrival here in Key Largo. We moved here, my husband Glenn and I, in 2017. And even before then, Reef Fest was one of the things we associated with Key Largo and how much we love it. So over those 7 years since I moved here, Glenn and I had a small scuba diving charter operation. And when that wrapped up, I was looking for something else to do in this community that I've really come to know and love and want to support. So working with REEF here in Key Largo has helped me to do that. Could I get a show of hands? How many people are from the Upper Keys, Isla Mirada to, all right, what do we say that's, that's abundant? No, it's many. I don't think it's abundant, it's many. And so one of my goals is to make sure that more people here in the Upper Keys know about REEF. There's a lot of history here, but the new things that we're doing, and that includes things like our lionfish derby, which we have a few months ago. Alli is spearheading that, spearheading, get it? That as well. And it's part of our contribution to our local reefs is helping make sure that that invasive species is kept in check as much as possible. We have staff here. The interns who are being helpful for all of the setup here are also based at our Key Largo campus. And we appreciate them and appreciate the community support for them as well. So Park, did you have a question
Sure.
about?
REEF has had, oh, do I need to use this? I didn't know. I didn't think so, but so REEF has had different people, executive directors, stuff like that. Just out of curiosity, what does a campus director do?
It's a good question. A question I've asked myself a couple times over the last, no, it's fine. My job is to support the people that work on the campus here in Key Largo, to be a good steward of the place, the buildings, the brand new building, the older building, the trees, the gravel, all of that stuff, and to be a representative of REEF in our community, in our Upper Keys community. So those are the three kind of buckets of responsibility that I see myself having, and it's been a real pleasure. I had one of those remote jobs where I was in my room with the computer for a few years of my career. So being able to be in person with people every day that are making such a difference to our Keys community is really important to me. Thank you for that question. Michaela, why don't I have you introduce yourself as well? It seems like we're going to be right back, folks. We've got an amazing program for you. Thank you for tuning in. The tote bag is available for just callers are standing by.
All right. Thank you, Jill. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Michaela Peterson. I am the new Director of Education for REEF. It's very nice to meet you. I've gotten to meet many of you this week, and I look forward to getting to chat with more of you. So the Director of Education is a new position here at REEF, and the goal is really to focus on the educational programming, grow the educational programming. So a little bit about me. I retired from my classroom last June. And then 2 days later, I started working for REEF. So I'm not very good at retirement, it turns out. I'm only really working 25% time right now, but I'm moving to the Keys next week. I will finally be moving here. So I was happy to see that many of you raised your hands because I'm hoping to learn all about Key Largo and make a home here. But I am incredibly proud to work for this organization. I'm so ready to really focus on the educational piece that REEF is doing. So I don't know if you know this, in addition to the incredible science that REEF does, and in addition to the incredible REEF member services that they do, the incredible work that they do around citizen science, they also have some really wonderful and engaging educational material. So we have groups that come down here and actually take part in educational programming. They learn about fish ID, or they learn about lionfish, or they do dissections, or they learn about ecology in Florida. And we are hoping that as we transition and move that into the OEC, the Ocean Exploration Center, that we can actually improve REEF's reach. I think we have incredible opportunities because of our members, because of our really wonderful staff, to really engage more and more students and more people of all ages. And there really are people of all ages coming through REEF, coming through our campus, coming through and doing these experiences. So our goal is going to be to increase the programming, increase the reach, transition over to the OEC, and really, it is the REEF Environmental Education Foundation. And so really working on that educational bit even more than we have been. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything?
There's a lot of different levels. There's a lot of different levels of education that you guys could reach. My cousin came down and did the program, and she teaches 6th and 7th graders, and she's taken it up there. But do you have like online resources for all levels of education? So you can, the younger you get them, the more they're going to support you.
Yeah, so we have a couple different types of virtual or remote programming. Right now we have virtual field trips, so and those are for grades 3 to 5 or 6 to 8. So they're sort of clumped. But basically you could take part in some programming in school wherever you are. We have recorded videos that sort of have these stopping points, and students get their journals, and it's very interactive. Sorry. Well, grades, so those are grades 3 to 5 and 6 to 8. And in addition to that, you can invite a REEF expert, one of our REEF educators, into your classroom virtually to come and talk or take part in that or do all of that work, right? And then in addition to that, we have high school case studies. Right now we have 2. We have a grouper moon case study, and we have the invasive species case study. We are going to grow those case studies and really engage educators. My goal is to engage educators from all over the United States to help us build some really rigorous and amazing curriculum that helps people connect to REEF's mission and vision on all levels. I work with other education partnerships, and so I feel like we have some really good tools. I feel like in this world of technology, we have the ability to really build something amazing and get it in those classrooms. So we're going to connect to some more educational best practices. And then hopefully, right now we have some college students who will come through on trips. And so we're also hoping to build that program. So that is the expedition program. So building out, so groups, I think it's I can't remember which group does it right now, but basically we put together and curate a trip for them that includes activities within REEF's campus in addition to things like snorkeling or scuba diving or kayaking or whatever. And so we're hoping to engage more of those high school groups, both here on campus and internationally, and build trips especially for them.
I noticed you guys do a lot of stuff with scripts. Do you partner with UC San Diego then to help with some of their programs that are?
Not yet, that I know of. We do have a program where teachers can come and get professional development on a trip, and they are able to receive credit through UCSD. I don't know fully about all our partnerships with them, but I am seeking more partnerships with universities because I think there's an incredible opportunity there to get people. I'm an incredible believer in place-based education, that I think that changes lives in every way. If you think back for yourself, like where have I truly learned the most? Where have things been triggered for me? How have I made decisions in my life? And it always has to do with place. And so I think that we have an opportunity, because this is a really special place, to really change people's lives in that way. And I also truly believe that, we learn the most when we're surprised about something or we're curious about something. I think those are the 2 things that really engage us the most. And I think REEF really has that, right? So we surprise people, we encourage curiosity, we make things happen in every way.
Michaela?
Yeah.
I see that Steve's got his show going. I'll be quick. I'm a graduate of the college here, the Florida Keys College, and I've been trying for years to get REEF and the college connected. And I would hope that we might discuss the possibility of getting the college to finally set up a presentation in in their campus. They've got a beautiful building, and it would be great to use the college to promote REEF and REEF to promote their marine program. So I look forward to discussing that with you. And I also wanted to let those of you who live in Key Largo know that we actually have a beautiful auditorium in a college based here in Key Largo. And I drove past that building hundreds of times before I finally realized that I graduated from that college in Key West. So thank you very much. It's
Yes.
exciting. Welcome to the Keys.
Thank you very much. All right, we're ready to start.
Okay, many of you know Stephen Frink, and I could take another 20 minutes to talk about his amazing background as an underwater photographer and his awards and publications. But for the sake of time, and since you've been so patient with our little telethon intermission there, I'm just going to hand it right over to Stephen to get started.
Well, thank you all very much. I see Ned and Anna back there. Man, I hadn't seen you guys for a long time. So good to see you. But you don't get the long distance award for being here today because my buddy Simon does. He came all the way from Fiji. Just for this slideshow. I'll tell you, last time I was in Fiji at Voli Voli, he was not there. So this is his Slacker Award coming to visit me. Mike and Sylvie drove from Ocean Reef, so there's all that. And I have another person I'd like to introduce today. We have Michael Greenberg in the room, I believe, right? Michael, stand up. Are you here? Stand up. This is going to be relevant. Stand by. And the reason it is because, so like Thursday night, I was at the Reef cocktail thing, and I was talking to Martha, and she said, you know, we don't see you very often at our parties, and I gave my apologies, and she said, and also it occurs to me like you never ever give slideshows in Key Largo. And I said, you know, the reality is I'm most often somewhere else, but I did see a slideshow at the Reef building one time, and it was by a very dear friend of mine, Jerry Greenberg. And so he was very proud to have been asked to present at the Reef building. And Michael and his mom and one of his sisters came, so that was cool. And we all got to see Jerry present, you know, his vision of the Florida Keys. Now, to understand, Jerry was a very dear friend of mine, and it happened because when I came to town, I had the idea, well, there was a time when we were both young men in the Florida Keys, right? Me and Jerry. And I had a little studio at mile marker 102.5, and I would, I had the idea if I processed film and rented cameras to people, maybe I could make a living in Key Largo. And so I did that. That was 1978. Slate and Amy came like 6 months later, so they're like latecomers to town. I came much further away than they did. So I had this little studio. I rented 210 square feet from Ocean Divers. And we had an E6 line, right? We could process film. And so Jerry would come to town, and oh my God, my staff were so stressed when they had to process Jerry Greenberg film, because it's not like if we scratched it or left water spots, he was going to let it slide. He never would have. But the reality was we did a good job, and it allowed us to become very close friends. And so Jerry, I came in 78, right? But he was here much longer. Michael, what year did Jerry begin diving Key Largo? 47. Wow. I don't know what the hell he was using to dive it, but he was here in 47. And he would tell me about how it used to be in the old days, you know, this whole shifting baseline thing. So my baseline was much later than his, but he would say, okay, this is what Carey's Fort looked like in 1969. And he said, and you know, this building that you're in right now, it wasn't always an Ocean Divers dive shop. It used to be a Carl Gage dive shop. In this office where you are, I'm not going to tell you all the things that went on the couch in this office where you are. So I threw the couch out, and anyway. But it used to be a Carl Gage dive shop, right? So, and he had this little submarine and a little teaching tank. So anybody driving down US 1 would see the the universal dive flag, and I think is that maybe over quiescence right now. But anyway, that's what it used to be. And he had this big wooden boat that he parked at the Holiday Inn. We all know how big wooden boats work out in the Florida Keys. You know, we got the Captain Crunch and we had the Reef Queen. I don't think either of them are on today. So at any rate, he would tell me stories about how things used to be, like when they sank the Christ statue in 1963, and when Pennicamp Park came into being in 1960, and what the statue looked like when it first went underwater. And, you know, so I tried to, you know, get in the water and kind of simulate the lessons that Jerry was giving me. This was with my wife, Barbara, on the anniversary, the 25th anniversary of the Christ statue, right? So I dived off Slate's boat and we went out there and shot this one. This was the 50th anniversary of the Pennicamp Park. And this being the symbol of Pennicamp Park, we had Sylvia Earle for that day. And so she put that little garland over the Christ statue. And anyway, so that was great. That was terrific. And we've had other opportunities to celebrate the statue. This was the cover of a Henderson Aquatics catalog for their wetsuits. My daughter, my little Keys kid that grew up here, she was probably about 14, snorkeling on the Christ statue. This was for the poster that we did to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the founding of Pennicamp Park. But one of the things that Jerry was most proud of was in 1962, January 1962, he had a cover story on Pennicamp Park. This was the first underwater color photograph ever published in National Geographic magazine. And he was rightfully proud of that accomplishment. And so we're going to see a couple. Michael is in charge now of the Jerry Greenberg Archive, and he graciously allowed me to present some of these images. So this was probably molasses reef back in the day, all these pork fish. And I know for a fact these spadefish are from molasses reef. And the guy in the background, coincidentally, is Carl Gage, the guy that had the dive shop before mine. But look at this. This is South Carysford. So Jerry would say to me, son, you got to go dive South Carysford. But you got to understand, I didn't know much about underwater photography when I came to town, and really all I had was a Nikonis 2 with a 35 millimeter lens. And then I bought some Canonet cameras and Ike light housings to rent to people. So I didn't have a wide angle lens. But so the first time I went to Carysford Reef, which was not easy to do because I was at the south end diving mostly with ocean divers, and it was a long damn way to Carysford, right? Slate and Amy would go once in a while, but even not that often. Mostly they went to the elbow. So I never got up there very much. And the first time I had a 35 millimeter lens, so it didn't do any good. Well, the second time I knew I had to have a wide angle lens, so I bought one. I bought a Secord 21, and I took it out there, and my camera flooded. My Nikonis flooded. So anyway, Jerry said, son, you need to get up there. I'm telling you, you need to get up there. I believed him. I knew I needed to. And the time I got up there, it wasn't that, it was like maybe 3 or 4 years later. And from what I saw then, what Jerry showed, and what I saw now was the difference between the top and the bottom. And that's what I learned that day in maybe 1984 in the Florida Keys, is that it goes so quick. Nobody could believe how quickly the coral reef could change. That lesson was brought to me later in life. There was a terrific brain coral at the Christ statue. And for years and years and years, that did really well, and that which was remarkable because everybody said the problems with the reef have to do with divers. I thought, well, okay, well the divers are going to sit on it or lay on it or fins are going to kick it, but that's not what did it in. Water quality is what did it in. And so, maybe 10, 15 years later, it lasted a long time. But then finally, when Hurricane Irma came, it was like scarified, and you can't even see a bit of it anymore. But things that happened in my time here there are some good things. For example, when I first came to town, there were not mooring buoys. You know, everybody would triangulate. They would look at like the Bell South Tower and, you know, park under this cloud and we're going to find out where to dive. But we got mooring buoys so that we didn't have this. We didn't have anchors dragging through the corals. And there are certain areas that were remarkable ever in life. For example, if you're on the winch hole, you guys dive molasses all the time, you know where the winch hole is. You look seaward and you see that big dead clump of coral, like it's all limestone, white looking and ugly. On the top of that, it used to be all fully decorated with elkhorn coral and all these copper sweepers. Ned and the other photographers in the room will recognize that as a 6x7 from a Pentax 6x7. So yeah, that was some pretty remarkable stuff. We had good elkhorn coral. This was part of a Decor catalog shoot. Mike White was the male model on it. And we shot that at Grecian, right, Mike? Yeah, so a lot of elkhorn back in the day. This is at Key Largo Dry Rocks, back behind the statue. And we had, you know, I got to tell you something. For all the work that's being done planting staghorn coral back in the day, everybody, all the coral restoration people were so keen on staghorn coral. These were not staghorn reefs. These were elkhorn reefs. You would find pockets of staghorn, but that's not really the way Key Largo grew. So there were problems we had. We lost a lot of coral. We lost a lot of fish, sometimes through stupidity. This was coincidentally that little building right back there. Right now, that's where the Coral Restoration Foundation office is. So they had Mike shot this one when Mike was our second Key Largo National Marine Sanctuary manager before it was the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and he found that longliners were stopping off Carey's Fort and cleaning their catch and pinning these corals. This was on Snapper Ledge. I tried very, very hard to get Snapper Ledge to be a no-take zone. That never happened, and it's not much of a dive anymore. But this is what precipitated my interest in getting Snapper Ledge dedicated. Jerry told me things that would happen to me in my life that I would see. I would see perhaps oil spills. He, of course, couldn't predict the BP oil spill, which is one of my photos on the cover. He said, you're going to have ships that are going to run aground. This is the Charles Baird. Many of you may know it better as Captain Mike's wreck, or Captain Tom's wreck. Captain Tom's wreck up on the way to on the way to Carey's Fort. We have the Spanish Anchor on Molasses. So there's a lot of boats transiting this area, and a lot of them got left behind. The Civil War wreck, also known as the Tonawanda. You all know the Benwood shipwreck, of course. That's what it looks like from the top. And that's more what it looks like from the bottom. Holds a lot of fish. That's what's so good about these artificial reefs, whether they're on purpose or by accident. They hold a lot of fish. Probably good for you reef guys, huh? A lot of places to shoot models. This is up off the elbow, the city of Washington. So this is probably what you more frequently recognize. There's Sylvia again, diving on the city of Washington. Terrific place for fish. Great place for models. The Florida Keys is using this for a double-page ad in Alert Diver right now, as a matter of fact. So this was kind of a curious thing that I saw happen right off the city of Washington. Weird thing. Holds a lot of lobsters, seasonally speaking. He told me that ships will ground. He said ships have been running aground here for hundreds of years. In fact, the reason I'm here is because a swim team buddy of mine was here as a treasure salver. He was diving the 1733 fleet. And, they were getting silver off the 1733 fleet. And in 78, I came to town to go diving for fun. And I met the guys at Ocean Divers where he got his tank filled. And I asked Joe Clark on my way out of town, if I come back, can I rent a little bit of your space? And that's how that all happened, 78. And then there was ones that we couldn't imagine how bad they would be. This is the wreck of the Wellwood, which essentially scarified maybe 20% of Molasses Reef. It was horrific. And I don't think it's really come back much even today, right? Anybody dive up at the Wellwood area much? No, I don't. I'm not even sure we have mooring buoys up there. There are things that we didn't know. What we didn't know, we didn't know. We didn't know that those little long-spine sea urchins, the diadema, that were so annoying, that stuck us in our knees and stuck us in our toes every night dive. We didn't know what would happen when they were gone, but we found out in the late 80s when a blight came through from, really, it came through the entire Caribbean, the Florida Keys, and like one day we would go out and we'd have long spine sea urchins, and the next week we would go out and all the spines were like in a concentric circle around this like mushy center to the urchin, and everywhere it died it was this horrendous blight. So what we didn't understand is that they graze on algae. Look how clean the rock is where the diadema graze. We don't have that anymore, and so we don't have the substrate that, this thing doesn't work very good, I gotta say. We didn't know we might have stony coral tissue loss disease. We didn't know what that would have to do with our pillar corals, but we learned. So there's a pretty graphic representation of what happened from stony coral tissue loss disease. Again, just like the diadema, we don't exactly know why it happened, but it emanated from a particular area. This one came from Miami South. The other came from the Western Caribbean east. Lionfish, we didn't have a clue that lionfish would come into our lives and what it would take to try to solve that. But all this talk of coral bleaching, it's not necessarily new. This shot is from 2010. Coral bleaching happened. It's not a novelty. The only thing novel is how bad it got. So what was really cool about Key Largo, being the name, it's the largest landmass. So on any given tidal shift, you don't get the dirty water from the bayside. And so also, if you look at how the Florida Keys orient themselves, arcing from the west to the north in the proximity of the Gulf Stream. So what we had was the best area for the development of corals in all of the Florida Keys, and also, coincidentally, it was close to Miami. So people that cared, like John Pennekamp and the people that were developing Everglades Park, they also understood that it was important to save these corals. And we had these spur and groove coral formations very close to the Gulf Stream, so it was very propitious for coral and marine life. That's what we had. So we had really terrific boulder corals back in the day. Big brain corals. Nice, huh? That was on the Civil War wreck. But what we always had, what was always, I think, most significant about Key Largo, or the Florida Keys in general, but Key Largo specifically, was fish. It was like, back in the 80s, I did 17 years on the road for Skin Diver magazine, and they would send me to Roatan and Bonaire and, the Bahamas. But I never really bothered taking pictures of fish because I could always do it better at home. I would take their walls and their beautiful blue water. But, why would I go there and try to shoot a barracuda? The first time I saw a dive guide like point at a barracuda that was further away than that screen over there, and they were excited, I said, that tells me all I need to know about where you go diving. So, there are the smart ways you photograph a barracuda. There's the stupid ways you photograph a barracuda. Don't tell Slade I said that. Oh, you can. He won't care. But it was a terrific place for marine life photography. Never did any better in the Western Hemisphere. And that's still here. You know, we do have problems with coral, but we certainly have fish, which is what reef does for a living, right? So you see what's happening there? Yeah, that's on the Aquarius habitat in the moon pool. So I heard somebody was complaining about not being able to get close to this fish, right? You could have borrowed it from me. This shot was significant to me because I took it the day after Irma. You know, we went out after Irma, and like all the sand was gone. And I went out on the statue, and there was like a water line on the statue, and it was about this deep between where the sand used to be and what was the coral rubble. It was the weirdest thing. So it was so terrifying. But on that dive, on that day, I saw this little turtle on that little bit of coral that remained. I said, okay, we'll be okay. And we were. You know, the Goliath groupers came back, and, you know, from 2017 to 2023, we're on a fast track. A lot of good stuff happening. It was good sharks. In fact, it got really sharky. I don't know if you remember, but it was really sharky out at Molasses for a while. You know, and I've been here for 46 years, and I think this is like the macro shot I took. Maybe the only one. But there's a lot of stuff, and this was on my daughter's 11th birthday. This was on, and that's Mike in the background, and that was just behind this, on dry rocks, just behind the statue, actually. We had ideas that as good as the reef was, it needed to be better, and so we had these natural artificial reefs, and we wanted to make a real one. So in '87, we found the wreck of the Bib and the Duane, and we were able to tow those from Boston Harbor. Listen to this. So you know how much shipwrecks cost to do these days. Like, I think the Oriskany cost $19 million. The Vandenberg cost $9 million. They're talking about sinking something even more expensive off the Panhandle. We got these 2 wrecks donated. We got them cleaned. We got them towed from Boston Harbor, and we got the Navy's experimental dive team to sink them. Ned Deloach, how much do you think it cost to do that? Well, I'll tell you, $250,000. It was the best investment we ever made. And so this is the Duane. The Duane went down. It doesn't look like it would, but it went down and it sat fully upright. We didn't do so good with the Bib, and that's more a wreck for tech divers now because they're not very beamy. Coast Guard cutter's not very beamy. But this is the day after the Duane went down. So wreck is 327 foot long. Can you even estimate what that visibility must have been that day? So it did what wrecks do. It accumulated coral incrustation and marine life. It's the wheelhouse of the Duane. That's the radar tower. And for a short time, we had a really friendly coney on there, little yellow coney. So after about 10 years, we thought, well, that was good, but we can do better. So instead of a 327-foot ship, we should go for a 510-foot ship. And Bill Harrigan was our first National Marine Sanctuary manager. And there was a day we were all sitting around drinking beer at Sharky's, and it was Bill and Slate and Rob Blesser and Paul Caputo and Dick Drake from the bank and Rob Blesser. And we had the idea, we said, well, let's get a bigger, better ship. And Bill said, well, geez, I'm connected. I'm a NOAA officer. Let me go to the James River fleet and I'll find you one. So he went up there and he said, I got the one. It's 512 foot long. It's got this great well deck. I can see it now. It's going to hold a bunch of copper sweepers and glass minnows and schooling grunts and maybe bar jack or something. I don't know. He's full of shit. But anyway, so we said, okay, let's get some money together. And we did. We got a big grant from the Tourist Development Council. And we moved it from the James River down to Key Largo. The thing about a big ship like this is you have to sink it in deep water, right? Because it needs 30 foot of clearance. And even then we had to like trim a lot of the top off it, just in case it sat upright, right? So we had the idea to get it cleaned, and a lot of local people came out here. We had it cleaned up there. We didn't have enough money, so we sold medallions so that you could buy for $100, you could buy an annual medallion, or for $10 a year, you could buy an annual, just an annual. So there's a lifetime and an annual, sorry. And I'm sure you can't even read this anymore because it's all corroded, but we worked hard, and it sank. Not easily, but it sank, and it ended up on its side. But we're plenty glad to get it on its side, because when it first went down, it turned turtle, as you recall. And I was in charge of talking to the Coast Guard that day. And so I went to the Coast Guard, and we didn't get our money from the Tourist Development Council until the wreck was on the bottom. And so I was very eager to get that $1 million, right, from the TDC, because the banks fronted us the money based on the medallions, but it was all predicated on getting that $1 million. So I went to the Coast Guard and I said, I want that $1 million. Am I okay with that? Can I tell them that we got a shipwreck? And he said, no, you can tell them you have a hazard of navigation. So anyway, we got it on its side. We're plenty happy. And then we all know it was Hurricane Dennis that set it up right. There's Sylvie diving on the Spiegel Grove. And you can see what these ships do in just a short period of time. They get cloaked with sponge and coral. And so that was a great initiative. Our artificial reefs are terrific. They have them, and every one of our districts have, the 5 Florida Keys districts have good wrecks. I think ours happen to be the best. Also, we had a situation where, this is Ken Niedermeyer. He's the guy that first, he was like he would raise live rock, right? So he watched and he observed, and he said, well, man, this coral seems to grow on this live rock. Maybe I could plant it. Maybe I could plant it back out on the reef. And so that was his epiphany. And then one thing led to another. He was the founder of Coral Restoration Foundation, moved off to do his own gig. And now I don't know how many coral restoration groups there are in the Upper Keys. There's probably 4 to 6 in the Upper Keys. And they do both staghorn, elkhorn, the boulder corals, pillar coral, trying to bring that back, of course. They grow a lot slower. But anyway, so for a while, it did really well, right? So these are all corals that were planted intentionally. They grew quite nicely. Jerry used to call these free-ranging corals. They're the ones that were actually planted, but they're all broadcast spawners. So when you had a critical mass of coral, whoever planted it, a lot of times when they would spawn, they would create spontaneous growth elsewhere. So that was what Jerry called free range, and even staghorn, like I say. But then in 2023, we began to see evidence that the waters were getting way too warm, the corals were starting to bleach, and then we couldn't deny it anymore. 2023 was a watershed moment for us. We lost a lot of coral. It was tragic. And that's what we saw. However, that's not where I wanted to end this slideshow today. That was hard times, and it's changed what our reefs look like, but it hasn't really changed the fact that there's still good diving here. I don't dive as much locally as I used to because I travel so much, but every year I do what we call the Stephen Frink Invitational, and the only reason I do that is to create an opportunity for me to spend a week on the water and go where I want to go. I can go to the city of Washington. I can go to Fire Coral Cave. Whatever we want to shoot that day, I get to control. So we do these things, and so these are some of the images that happened in the course of my Stephen Frink Invitational, just all post 2023. These are things that we're seeing today. On any given day, that's what you're going to see out on the reef. So I didn't want to leave it on a downer. I did want to kind of bring it back to, the whole shifting baseline thing. I didn't see what Jerry saw in 1947. You're not going to see what I saw in 1978, but you're going to see good stuff. And I think that's probably what I'd like to leave you with today. There's a lot of good reasons to die. This is free-range coral today. So that's out on Snapper Ledge, in fact. So the statue, I think, is looking a little shop-worn. It doesn't look as good as it used to, but I'm hoping that it'll get back to where it was. And this happens to be today still out on the elbow. So we have elk horns still. Pretty nice, huh? Our lobsters are still happy. Our angelfish are still happy. That's on the Spiegel Grove just a few months ago. And with that, we'll celebrate what we have now. Thank you. Did I hit my 35 minutes? Probably not.
You did awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate seeing that and the hopefulness. I mean, that's what we've got to have is hope. And there's a lot of good hope stories and they're always good to share. So thank you for that. Cause it can,
Pleasure.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure if anybody has questions for Stephen, now would be the time. Okay.
Yes, of course.
Excuse me. I've seen black spine sea urchins in St. Lucia in the last few years. Have you noticed any other places where they're coming back?
The Eastern Caribbean didn't really, it was just a little short time they lost them, they came back. They had a second bout of diadema loss in the Eastern Caribbean, Dominica in particular. But in fact, yeah, I'm glad to hear that they have come back because they went away briefly. They came back long before ours. They stayed much longer than ours, but there was a second batch of diet. You know about that, right? Can anybody speak to that more scientifically than me?
So there was a paramecium that was discovered, like a pathogen that killed most of the sea urchins, or at least it was linked in Puerto Rico. And they're doing restoration efforts to kind of put more grazers in the reef. But that was basically discovered in USF by Dr. Maya Breitbart. So I invite you to look at the Nature article on the paramecium, the ciliate that actually caused the sea urchin death.
I will offer one thing. I was diving Dominica one time, and I came up from a wall, and I saw this like pinnacle, right? And it was white, and I thought, oh, geez, what's happening to their coral reefs that it's all gone white like that? And I got there, and I saw it was just because it didn't have algae. It was the long spine sea urchin had grazed it to the base like it was meant to be. Nobody else? Yes, Amy. I have.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second.
I think they want you to have the mic, Amy.
So you're the world traveler and you're all over the world all the time. What are you seeing in other places? Are you seeing the same type of water warming, like say in Indonesia or in those places?
You know, I was in Raja Ampat in February, I guess, and we had 86-degree water, but we didn't have any evidence of coral bleaching. I've dived Fiji. Simon could speak to that better than I have. There have been coral bleach episodes in Fiji. When I was there summer before last, we didn't have any bleaching. You know, I think the thing is, yes, if the water gets warm, which can happen, you'll get bleaching, but it's a matter of water quality in terms of how quickly it'll come back. I've been in the Maldives after really bad coral bleaching, and it came back. I've been in French Polynesia after really bad coral bleaching, and it's come back. I remember a story that Bob Halstead told me when he was running his liveaboard in Papua New Guinea. He was telling me about a big brain coral, and he somebody had carved, like one of his dive masters actually, carved their initials in this brain coral, and it brought him to tears. And so he quit diving there. And it was like 2 or 3 years, and then one day he got weathered out and he had no place else to dive. So he went back there thinking, oh, surely that coral must be dead by now. But not only was it not dead, he couldn't tell which one it was, because if the water quality is good, the coral will come back.
So
You
do you
agree,
think,
Simon?
do you think some of it is that those corals are more heat resistant, possibly? I mean,
I don't know. That's for science to determine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a possibility. But on the other hand, you take, I don't know, they haven't found the heat resistant corals on the Great Barrier Reef. You know, I don't know. I think it's water quality. That's just me. I think it's water quality. You know, you take a place like the Great Barrier Reef that has so much outflow from, you know, from agriculture, from the rivers into agriculture and the coal mining, you know. So, you know, I think those corals have a harder time because even though they're fairly far offshore, the Great Barrier Reef, the inshore waters are problematic. You know, think about it. It's not that long ago that we even got sewers, right, Amy?
True. Oh, yeah.
You know, hard as that is to believe, but there were cesspools and septic tanks 10 years ago here. So I don't know. I think it's near shore more than anything, but also with the whole coral bleaching thing. I don't want to take you too far off, but the first time I saw that something was wrong, I was out on the statue, and you might have seen those photos of the elkhorn, like the statue way in the back and the elkhorn. And so it looked fuzzy to me. Something was not right. And when I looked at the images at night and blew it up to 100%, I saw that there was a thermocline. But the thermocline was not from the top coming down, as you would expect. It was from the bottom coming up. And so what that told me was that all that shallow water on the bay side, which, you know, was a bigger problem for all the islands down south that are smaller islands with more ways for every tidal shift to bring it through. So when that water superheated on the bay side, and, you know, it would pass through the cut and North Creek, South Creek, and anyway, it wasn't the top, it was the bottom. It was that heavy, super saturated, hot water, heavy salt water that was coming up, and, you know, so it's all related. I mean, there's no surprise there. It's all related, but I think it's all near shore.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, I was wondering, what was your favorite place to dive in, and compared to like 40 years on how it looked back then compared to now?
My favorite place to dive
Yes.
in all my life depends on whether you want to do it from a dive boat or from a time machine. But if I get to dive it from a time machine, the first place I saw clownfish and soft corals was the Red Sea. And I went there probably in 1984. And like, that's the memory of, you know, it's super crowded now. It's not the same, you know, you can't go back, right? But if I look at the planet today, where would I go? It depends on what you want to do. If I want to dive go swim with humpbacks, I'll go to Moorea. If I want to go see beautiful soft coral reefs and clear water, I'll go to Fiji. If I want to see coral fields, staghorn that's like more than a football field, you know, I'll probably go to Indonesia, Raja Ampat. So I think now, because I know I've traveled so much and I know what to expect, I don't think of any single place as being good for everything. I think of a lot of places that are the best of the best for something. And that's, you know, so that's what keeps me on the road.
Well, that's an amazing place to end. Thank you so much, Stephen. Yeah, as Martha noted, this is